Blue lights exploded across the wet highway while rain slammed against the windshield of Carlton White's old pickup truck. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. Beside him, his 8-year-old son slept with a small blanket pulled up to his chin. Carlton's chest rose heavily as a female officer stepped out of the patrol car and slowly walked toward the truck. Something about her face felt strange. Not angry. Not cold. Almost emotional. Carlton had been pulled over before. Broken taillights. Late registration. Warnings he could barely afford to fix. But tonight felt different. The officer stopped beside his window and stared at him for several long seconds without speaking. Then she leaned closer and quietly whispered words that made his blood run cold. "You really don't remember me, do you?" Before we go deeper into this case, take a second and hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Because what happened next turned one simple traffic stop into something nobody saw coming. Carlton White lived in a tiny apartment that always felt too small for grief. The walls were thin. The kitchen pipes leaked every night. And the old heater barely worked when winter came around. Still, Carlton tried his best to make it feel like home for his son, Marion. Every morning started before sunrise. Carlton woke up tired. He packed lunches. He checked homework. Then he rushed to his delivery job before the city fully woke up. Most days he barely had enough money for gas. But he kept going because Marion depended on him. 4 years earlier, Carlton's wife Danielle passed away after a sudden illness. One moment she was laughing beside him in the kitchen. A few months later, she was gone forever. Part of Carlton never recovered from that pain. But he hid it well. At least he tried to. Marion noticed more than adults realized. The little boy saw the unpaid bills stacked beside the television. He noticed when Carlton skipped dinner and claimed he already ate at work. And he noticed the tired look in his father's eyes every night. One evening Marion quietly asked him a question over dinner. "Dad, are we doing okay?" Carlton forced a smile. "Of course we are." But Marion did not look convinced. Children always knew when adults were pretending. At work, things kept getting worse. Carlton's supervisor, Mark Forrest, called him into the office one afternoon. "You've been late again." Carlton rubbed his tired eyes. "I'm trying my best." Mark sighed heavily. "Trying won't keep this place running." Carlton wanted to explain everything. The sleepless nights. The truck problems. The pressure of raising a child alone. But he stayed quiet. Because people stopped caring about excuses once bills were involved. Mark handed him another route sheet. "One more mistake and I'll replace you." Those words stayed in Carlton's chest all day. After work he picked Marion up from Mrs. Alfred's apartment downstairs. The older woman greeted him warmly. "You look exhausted again." Carlton laughed weakly. "That obvious?" Mrs. Alfred gently touched his shoulder. "You can't carry all this pain forever." Carlton looked away. "I don't really have another choice." That night he sat beside Marion's bed while the little boy slept peacefully. The apartment was silent except for distant sirens outside. Carlton looked at his son and quietly whispered something he had never admitted out loud. "I'm tired." Tears filled his eyes for a moment before he quickly wiped them away. Because fathers like Carlton believed they had to stay strong no matter what. Before we continue, share your thoughts below. A lot of parents watching this know exactly what it feels like to keep smiling while falling apart inside. And Carlton had no idea his life was about to change on one rainy night. The storm began late that evening. Rain poured across the city while Carlton finished his final delivery route. He was already exhausted when his phone suddenly rang. It was Mark Forrest. "You missed a package." Carlton closed his eyes in frustration. "No, I didn't. The client says otherwise." "Go fix it." Carlton looked at the clock. Marion was asleep in the passenger seat beside him. "Mark, it's almost midnight." "I don't care." "Handle it." The call ended. Carlton gripped the steering wheel tightly. Every extra mile meant more stress. More gas. More exhaustion. But he could not afford to lose his job. So he turned the truck around and drove back through the storm. Rain hammered the windshield so hard he could barely see the road. Beside him, Marion slowly woke up. Dad? Go back to sleep, buddy. Marion rubbed his eyes. You look sad. Carlton forced another smile. I'm okay. But he was lying. His chest hurt from stress. His hands shook from exhaustion. And deep down, he feared his entire life was falling apart. Then flashing blue lights suddenly appeared behind the truck. Carlton's stomach dropped instantly. No. Please not tonight. He slowly pulled onto the shoulder while cars rushed past spraying water everywhere. Marion sat upright nervously. What happened? It's okay. Just stay calm. Officer Martina Henderson stepped out of the patrol car. Tall. Serious. Rain dripping from the edge of her hat. She approached slowly while shining a flashlight inside the truck. Carlton rolled the window down halfway. License and registration. Her voice sounded calm but firm. Carlton reached for his wallet with trembling fingers. I know the taillight's broken. I'm getting it fixed soon. Officer Henderson looked at him carefully. Then her eyes moved toward Marion. The little boy looked frightened. How old is your son? 8. She nodded slowly before looking back at Carlton again. Longer this time. Almost like she recognized him. You seem nervous. Carlton laughed weakly. Life's been rough lately. For a second, something changed in her expression. Then another patrol car pulled up behind them. A younger officer stepped out quickly. These tags are expired, he said after checking the truck. Carlton lowered his head. I know. I'm behind on payments. Step out of the vehicle. Marion's face filled with fear. Dad? Carlton slowly stepped into the cold rain while passing cars slowed down to stare. The younger officer searched the truck. People watched from nearby vehicles. Carlton felt humiliated standing there soaked in rain like a criminal. Then Marion suddenly cried out from inside the truck. Please don't take my dad! The sound shattered Carlton's heart. Officer Henderson looked toward the boy. Then back at Carlton. And suddenly she asked something that froze him completely. Did you ever know someone named Milton Henderson? Carlton's face changed instantly. And the rain suddenly felt colder than before. For several seconds Carlton could not speak. Milton Henderson. He had not heard that name in years. Officer Henderson stared directly at him. You remember him? Carlton swallowed hard. I knew him a long time ago. The younger officer looked confused. Who's Milton? Officer Henderson ignored him completely. Where did you know my brother from? Brother. The word hit Carlton hard. Old memories rushed back immediately. Years earlier, before Danielle became sick, Carlton worked construction. One afternoon there was a terrible accident at the site. Scaffolding collapsed. Metal beams crashed everywhere. A young worker became trapped beneath the wreckage. That worker was Milton Henderson. Carlton remembered pulling him free seconds before another beam crushed the area completely. He remembered Milton crying afterward. Remembered the ambulance lights flashing across the dirt. And remembered Milton thanking him over and over again. Carlton slowly looked at the officer. He survived? Officer Henderson nodded softly. For a while. The rain poured harder around them. Then she explained everything. Milton passed away 2 years earlier from a heart condition nobody knew he had. Before dying, he often spoke about the man who saved his life. A hard-working father named Carlton White. Carlton stood frozen. He never knew Milton tried searching for him afterward. Officer Henderson's voice softened. My brother carried your picture in his wallet. Carlton blinked in disbelief. What? He never forgot what you did for him. For the first time in years, somebody looked at Carlton like he mattered. Not like a problem. Not like another exhausted man falling behind in life. But the younger officer interrupted again. His registration is still expired. Reality came crashing back. Carlton lowered his eyes in shame. I know. I'm trying. Officer Henderson studied him carefully. When's the last time you actually slept? Carlton laughed bitterly. I honestly can't remember. Something about that answer broke through her professional wall. She looked toward Marianne sitting scared inside the truck. Then back at Carlton standing in soaked clothes under flashing lights. You're barely holding yourself together, aren't you? Carlton wanted to deny it. But he was too tired to lie anymore. No. His voice cracked. I'm not. For the first time in years, Carlton told someone the truth. He talked about Danielle. The hospital bills. The sleepless nights. The fear of losing his job. And the pressure of pretending everything was okay for Marian. Officer Henderson listened quietly. Because behind her badge she carried grief too. She understood loss. She understood loneliness. And she understood what it meant to keep moving while your heart stayed broken. Marian slowly stepped out of the truck and hugged his father tightly. It's okay, Dad. It's okay, Dad. Carlton nearly broke apart right there on the roadside. Before we go deeper, I want to hear your thoughts. If you saw a struggling parent standing alone in the rain like Carlton, what would you have done in that moment? Officer Henderson suddenly walked back toward her patrol car. Carlton's stomach twisted with fear. Was she still going to arrest him? Tow the truck? Call child services? Marian held onto his father's arm tightly. The storm roared around them while blue lights flashed across the highway. Then Officer Henderson returned holding something in her hand. And Carlton could not believe what he was seeing. Officer Henderson held out a folded envelope. Carlton looked confused. Then he realized there was money inside. Several $100s. He stepped back immediately. I can't take that. Yes, you can, she said softly. It's from Milton. Carlton stared at her speechlessly. Officer Henderson explained that after Milton died, she found a small envelope hidden inside one of his old boxes. Carlton's name was written on the front. He said if I ever found you, I should give this to you. Carlton's hands trembled as he opened the note inside. The handwriting looked rushed but heartfelt. If you ever see Carlton White again, tell him he gave me years with my family I never should have had. Tell him I never forgot him. Carlton pressed the note against his chest while tears filled his eyes. For years he had felt invisible. Forgotten. Like the world only noticed him when something went wrong. But now kindness from the past had reached into one of the darkest moments of his life. Officer Henderson looked toward Marian. Your father is a good man. Marian nodded proudly. I know. That simple answer nearly shattered Carlton completely. Then Officer Henderson removed the citation form from her pocket. Without saying another word, she tore it in half. Carlton stared at her in disbelief. You're letting me go? I'm giving you another chance. For the first time in years, someone spoke to Carlton with genuine kindness instead of frustration. Before we continue, tell me something honestly in the comments. Has one small act of kindness ever changed your entire week the way this moment changed Carlton's night? Officer Henderson handed him a small business card. My cousin owns an auto shop. Tell him I sent you. He'll help fix the truck. Carlton looked overwhelmed. Why are you helping me? She smiled sadly. Because my brother would have wanted me to. The rain finally began slowing down around them. And for the first time in a very long time, Carlton felt hope. The next morning Carlton woke up feeling different. Not free from problems. Not suddenly healed. But lighter somehow. He dropped Marian off at school before driving to the auto shop on Officer Henderson's card. The owner greeted him warmly. Within hours the taillight was repaired. The registration issue was also placed on a payment plan Carlton could finally manage. For the first time in months, things felt possible again. A few days later Mark Forrest called Carlton into his office. Carlton expected another warning. Instead, Mark looked uncomfortable. I heard about what happened. Carlton frowned. What do you mean? Officer Henderson's cousin knows my brother. Mark sighed heavily. You're one of the hardest workers here. I should have paid more attention. Then he offered Carlton a better delivery route with steadier hours. Carlton almost could not believe it. Life had been cruel for so long that kindness felt unfamiliar. That evening Marian hugged him tightly after dinner. "You smile more now." Carlton laughed softly. "Maybe I do." Even Mrs. Alford noticed the difference. "There's life back in your eyes again." Carlton looked down at Milton's old note resting on the kitchen table. Sometimes hope arrived from places nobody expected. Weeks later, Officer Henderson invited Carlton and Marian to a memorial gathering for Milton. Pictures of Milton covered the room. Family members shared stories through tears and laughter. Officer Henderson stood beside Carlton quietly. "My brother would have been happy to see you here." Carlton nodded slowly. "He changed my life too." She looked at him with watery eyes. "How?" Carlton smiled softly. "He reminded me not to give up." For several quiet seconds neither of them spoke. They simply stood together carrying different pieces of the same grief. But now neither of them carried it alone. Before we head into the final part of this story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever met someone for only a few minutes who changed your life forever? Because sometimes those moments stay in our hearts longer than we expect. Carlton's struggles did not disappear overnight. Bills still existed. Work was still tiring. Grief still hurt sometimes. But hope had finally returned to that small apartment. And sometimes hope is enough to help a broken person keep moving forward. Some nights change people forever. For Carlton White, it happened on a rainy highway under flashing blue lights. He believed life had already beaten him down completely. Like many single parents, he carried pain silently. He worked until exhaustion. He smiled when he wanted to break. And he kept moving because his son needed him. A lot of people watching tonight understand that feeling deeply. There are parents working late shifts right now. Parents skipping meals so their children can eat first. Parents hiding tears behind closed doors after their kids fall asleep. Those struggles are real. And sometimes they feel invisible. That's why this story matters. Not because of a traffic stop, but because one person chose compassion instead of judgment. Officer Martina Henderson could have treated Carlton like another problem during another long shift. Instead, she saw the exhausted father standing in the rain. She saw someone barely holding his life together. And because of one strange conversation, Carlton found hope again. Milton Henderson also proved something powerful. Real kindness never truly disappears. Years after Carlton saved his life, that gratitude came back exactly when Carlton needed it most. Sometimes people never realize how deeply one good action can affect another person. A kind word. A second chance. A moment of understanding. Those things stay with people. And maybe somebody watching this story tonight needed that reminder too. If this story touched your heart, please take a second and leave a like on this video. It truly helps stories like this reach more people who may need hope right now. And if you are a single parent carrying heavy burdens silently every day, share your story in the comments. You never know who may read your words and feel less alone because of them. I also want to ask you something before we end. If you were standing in Officer Henderson's shoes that night, would you have handled things the same way? Let us know below. And if you enjoy emotional stories about struggle, hope, second chances, and family, make sure you subscribe to the Redeemed Single Dad. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Thank you for spending this time with us tonight. And remember this. Sometimes the most important conversations happen during the hardest moments of our lives. And sometimes those moments change everything forever.